I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: is Den of Thieves a good movie? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is because obviously I've recently seen the film Den of Thieves. Just be aware there are going to be spoilers, so if you don't want anything spoiled, you haven't seen the film, go away, come back later after you've watched the movie. If you're still here, you have been warned. Den of Thieves is a movie that answers the question: what would happen if a writer-director really loved Heat, The Usual Suspects, and The Town? Because basically this film takes major elements of those three movies and puts them all together in this film. It is definitely a homage movie. There are lots and lots of homage moments to those other movies. Heat is very much prevalent as sort of, I would say, probably the main inspiration, but those other two films are almost certainly there. Gerard Butler plays the main character. Really, this is a classic example of Gerard Butler being typecast now as Gerard Butler. He seems to have taken that mantle off Liam Neeson. Remember the whole thing of Liam Neeson being typecast as Liam Neeson? After Taken came out, every other movie sort of seemed to feature a character who was very similar to Liam Neeson's character in Taken. Well, Gerard Butler is now on that particular gravy train. And in this film, his character, I think, is just a little bit cartoonish. There's a bit of fleshing out that is needed for this character that's kind of really lacking here. And there are some things about this character that just don't make a lot of sense. In fact, at times I find the character a little bit jarring. It's just sort of, it doesn't quite make sense that he's the leader of this elite police bank robbery crime unit, because it sort of feels like he wouldn't really be up to the task, and it's not really the sort of person you'd want in charge. And I don't know why that is. There's also moments where he literally does get a little bit cartoonish and it feels a little bit tonally inconsistent. There's sort of humour or moments of humour that don't quite seem to fit the tone of what they were trying to go with the rest of the film. There's one or two very clear examples of this that feels like it belongs in another movie. The other thing too is that there are aspects of his character and the way in which the plot is crafted that just don't really make any sense and don't have any payoff. So there is one of the strangest subplots I've seen in a film in a while, and that involves Gerard Butler's family, his wife and kids just up and leaving him. And it happens very early in the film, but it's the sort of thing that would happen normally for a reason, to either tell you something about that character, or more importantly in this case, it would usually be a setup for something that's going to happen later. It would be a sort of payoff moment that was going to happen further on down the track in the film. But neither of those things is true. It doesn't give us any new information about this character that we don't already have. We know already that he is a loose cannon, that he's got issues with alcohol, and he plays fast and loose with the regulations and with ethics. So it's not like this particular subplot with his family tells us that and we didn't already know that. And there is no payoff. I actually wonder whether there's a piece of film sitting on a cutting room floor somewhere where that moment was actually meant to be used later in the film. Like, I don't know, the bad guys were going to take his wife and kids hostage or something, but they decided to cut it from the film because it just makes absolutely no sense. There is literally no payoff. It's almost like the director said, hey, I need my guy to kind of be like John McClane from Die Hard. And remember, he was this rough around the edges, hard-drinking cop whose marriage was broken up. So I need to have my cop with that same sort of character trait, so I'm just going to give it to them. But it doesn't make any sense. It's not like Die Hard, there's a reason for it, and it helps to fuel the plot. In this film, it just doesn't make any sense. There's another one as well where there's no payoff with the actual motivations or the history, the backstory of the bank robbers in this film. They're all military guys, and that is an absolutely fascinating idea, and there's a lot that you could play with that concept, but ultimately this film just doesn't take that anywhere. And the bizarre thing is, Gerard Butler actually asks a question at one point earlier in the film about what it is that's motivating these ex-military guys to now have become these top criminals. And it's like, yeah, that's an interesting question. I remember hearing him ask that question and then thinking to myself, there's going to be a payoff at some point. They're going to tell us that they saw some atrocities while they were fighting for the US, or something happened to them overseas that caused them to spiral down this path of criminality. But no, it's never ever revealed what's going on. It never, in fact, it's just so pointless in many ways. All that point, that I guess that plot point exists for, is, I guess, to make sense of why they are so good at shooting and so good at sort of military-style engagement tactics, but that's it. Beyond that, it doesn't serve any purpose, and it's frustrating because there is lots that you could play with that concept. There is a lot that you could do with that concept, but it's just not utilised in any sort of meaningful way. All in all, this film, as I said, is a very frustrating outing. One thing that I found really annoying was the final shootout scene. To me, this was one of those big homage moments. It was like, yes, how can we have our downtown shootout scene that they had in Heat, the one that everyone loves, that Andy McNabb choreographed? How do we do this in our movie? And so they created their own inferior version of that. It's a little bit anticlimactic at the end, but what was really frustrating for me was the way in which they set it all up with this line of cars, and there's a whole lot of innocent people here, and they decide that this is the prime opportunity to engage with these heavily armed, military skilled bad guys. It's like, what are you doing? This would be the most dangerous and absurd police decision-making exercise that we've seen in a long time. It made no sense, and so it was really frustrating to me. I remember being pulled out of the film at that moment and thinking, oh, come on, what serious law enforcement officers would actually do this? Is no one going to stop and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't actually start a shootout right here and right now? But no, they had to do this because this was a big homage moment. All in all, this is a film that sort of takes, as I said, visions and ideas from other much better films and pulls them all together and doesn't really do a good job of bringing it all together. It's not an entirely bad film. It's not a woeful or awful movie. It's the kind of film that you can watch, just chuck it on, switch off your brain, don't think too hard, and there's enough in there to pass a sort of lazy Saturday afternoon. But it's not great. It's certainly not up there in the pantheon of best action movies of all time. And as I said, it's a little bit cartoonish in places, and Gerard Butler certainly seems to have been cast now as Gerard Butler yet again. If you've seen the film, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comments section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon or PayPal. There is a link for both in the description below. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you next week on The Daily Question.